My story is pretty weird. I did not grow up in a religious setting. I was always told that God was real and to pray, and he was an authority figure, but that's about it. When I was 9, my family went through some serious tribulations, and I got into some pretty bad stuff. I was very self-destructive. I was reckless, I was a rebel. I had absolutely no care what was gonna happen to me, and by the time I became a teenager, I developed an agnostic view of life. I partied a lot. I was harming myself psychologically and physically. If I wasn't at a party, I was somewhere with people chasing some sort of high, and those people were probably just as messed up as I was. When I was 15, I got invited to a Pentecostal church. I went unwillingly, and the pastor pretty much called me out randomly. It was really weird. I didn't like it. I was uncomfortable, and I was embarrassed. But basically, this guy was walking up and down the aisle and looked at me and was like, "Hey, you," and just started telling me that Jesus loved me and called me out of all my burdens. And that was something I'd never experienced before. The feeling I felt very unique, and that changed everything. It did impact my life because I started realizing there was something out there, and it was God. I don't know who God was, but I knew God wanted me, but that didn't change my behavior when I got home at all. In fact, it probably got worse after that. I continued being a bad kid and partying and doing crazy stuff, but I realized how much God was really behind me the entire time. I was in places I should not have been as a kid and consumed things I should not have been consuming. And there were many nights I did not expect to wake up the next morning, and I really didn't care. But right after I graduated, one of my friends who had been a party goer with me changed his life for the Lord and approached me and invited me to church. And I continued to go until that eventually stuck. And in 2012, I found a church that was home to me, and they taught me a lot about just the character of love and God, and that I wouldn't be rejected because of who I was, what I had done. And there I was baptized, but it was after my baptism that I really fell away from the Lord and put him on the shelf. I started going to college and got into a relationship with pretty much a God hater, not just an unbeliever, but a God hater, and it was super unhealthy. I found H2O through H2O Live, and it was so different. I instantly fell in love with the church and continued to go. That was the first time I had consistently gone to church since the church that I was baptized at, so it had been a while. And I really started to fall in love with who Jesus was and started recognizing the changes that I had to make in my life. But the more that I fell in love with Jesus, this guy that I was with was getting pretty angry because he realized not only did I love something a lot more than him, and I had been with him for almost 3 years at that point, but he saw he was losing me to the Lord. And I realized I had to do something because I was going down a really bad path. Even though I was going to church, I was getting high and with this guy that was nothing but harming me. So I started to pray and ask the Lord what I needed to do. I don't like change, and God told me I needed to change. I didn't trust him because I was afraid of the results of giving things up and leaving people behind. I spent nights praying, and not even just praying, but I think arguing with the Lord, crying. I can specifically remember being on my knees in front of my bed and feeling like I was going to pull my hair out, just yelling at the Lord, asking him why he would do this to me. Why would he carry me all that way just to tell me you can't be in the place that you are at, you have to change. And June of 2014 was the last time I ever got high. And that was great. That started the cycle of knowing I can change. And the wrestling with God continued until in October, one of my angry nights of praying, the Lord spoke to me and finally just told me, you just gotta trust me. And I trusted him, and I got out of my relationship, which was the greatest thing that I could have done. And I finally was able to surrender to the Lord. I finally was able to break all the chains, the shackles, the bondage of depression and anxiety, having panic attacks and being on medications and all the suicidal attempts as a child. Everything just broke away, and I surrendered myself to the Lord, and I told him, just have me to yourself. And I did, and that was the greatest decision I had ever made. I can't emphasize that enough, letting him have me.